What is going on, guys? My name is Stuber, and I'm here to break down the 7-game NBA slate on Draftkings and PrizePicks.com. If you guys are new here, welcome. If you guys are a returning viewer, welcome back. It seems like my voice is getting worse and worse every single day, so shout out to all you guys bearing with me throughout this time. But you know, we have a 7-game slate on tap. Don't really want to mess around talking about anything else. We'll just get through this video with everything you need to know. Again, I will be live streaming an hour before lock at 5 p.m. Central Time. There is a lot of news we are going to be wanting to wait for, so I will go over it in that stream, as well as answering as many questions as I possibly can. Make sure to drop a like and comment. That is greatly appreciated. But let's just jump right into it. Also, if you guys have been tailing my PrizePicks plays, specifically the ones that I give away in Patreon, we're up 7.4 units in the just the Patreon plays alone. But we've been killing it with all of the suggestions that I give in the videos, the streams, the Discord, the Patreon as well. I'm up a considerable amount since partnering with PrizePicks. If you guys want to play with me over there, use code Taylor, TAYLOR. You'll receive a 100% match bonus up to $100, and I give away pretty much all my plays for free in these videos, the live streams, and in my Discord. Of course, we do have the official Patreon play that I feel the most confident in every single day. We are up 7.4 units in those since the beginning of the NBA season. But we will start with the Orlando Magic versus the Toronto Raptors. The Magic are going to be without Michael Carter-Williams, Markelle Fultz, Jonathan Isaac, Chuma Okeke, and E'Twaun Moore. The minutes of the starters seem to be very secure, even with Terrence Ross coming off the bench and Gary Harris also coming off the bench and returning these last couple of games. Even Franz Wagner, I thought his minutes could get cut back a bit, but he played mid-30s minutes last game out, even with Gary Harris there. So I don't mind the starting lineup, guys. Not the best matchup in the league, but Jalen Suggs is probably the guy that I'm most interested in on this team. Continues to lead the team with a 25.6% usage rating. Just really hasn't put together a good fantasy game just yet, but he is only $5,100. So in tournaments, he's not the worst play, but really not interested in that Orlando Magic team as a whole. Move over to the Toronto Raptors. They are going to be without Pascal Siakam, Yuta Watanabe, one of the tightest rotations in the league. Everyone in the starting lineup is viable. I mean, even guys like Goran Dragic coming off the bench aren't playing any more than like 13-14 minutes per game right now. OG Anunoby, I mean, I told you, we just keep going back to the well with this guy, and he's going to pay off. He was shooting just so poorly at the beginning of the year, and he should have been doing this the entire time, scoring 40-plus fantasy points a game, and he's only 6,800. I think that's a bit too cheap. Precious Achiuwa and Gary Trent Jr. are also too cheap. They should. Gary Trent Jr., since joining the starting lineup, has played mid-30s minutes every single game. Precious Achiuwa in competitive games should be playing 30 to 32 minutes. He's too cheap at 5,300. Scotty Barnes is playing high 30s minutes. Same with Fred VanVleet. I think everybody on this team from the starting lineup is more than viable. Move over to the Indiana Pacers versus the Brooklyn Nets. TJ Warren, Malcolm Brogdon, Keelan Martin, Isaiah Jackson are all out. Karis LeVert is questionable. There is a chance that Karis LeVert plays in this game. If he does play, I'm not interested in him, but he would make TJ McConnell and Chris Duarte, who would be slam dunk plays without Brogdon on the court, a little less viable. They would still be viable, but just not nearly as much as they would be if Karis LeVert wasn't out there. Go back to the beginning of last year, Domantas Sabonis averaging 1.38 fantasy points per minute without Brogdon on the court, and potentially without Karis LeVert again, and he should play big minutes in this game to try to keep them within reaching distance of the Brooklyn Nets. And he got a pretty big price decrease from $10,000 to $9,400. I like him a good bit. But TJ McConnell, since the beginning of last year, 1.12 fantasy points per minute with Brogdon off the court, has been the direct backup for him so far this year, and I'm expecting him to get the start. And then Chris Duarte, like I mentioned earlier, is a pretty good play in his own right. Move over to the Brooklyn Nets. Kyrie Irving is out. Nicholas Claxton is questionable. So Claxton missed last game But they ended up running Paul Millsap, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Blake Griffin. They split all 48 of those center minutes, and it wasn't enough minutes for any of them to do anything. So I'm not really interested in those guys, even if Claxton is out again. Kevin Durant is the clear spend-up option preference on this team over James Harden. James Harden really struggling this year with the new foul rules. And then it looks like Bruce Brown is back to his usual role on this team like we ended last year. 3 games ago, he ended up coming off the bench after not being in the rotation, playing 27 minutes. Grabbed the start 2 games ago, played 30 minutes, and then last game, he grabbed the start and played 34 minutes. And he is only $3,800, one of the best value plays on the slate. Really just considering him and Kevin Durant from this Brooklyn Nets team. Move over to the Charlotte Hornets versus the Miami Heat. The Hornets are going to be without Terry Rozier. PJ Washington is doubtful. Without Terry Rozier, Kelly Oubre should grab the start again. Cody Martin should also play more minutes off of the bench. Mason Plumlee's minutes are much more secure with no PJ Washington. He has played 32 and 37 minutes in each of the last 2 games without Washington. So he is a fine play. I prefer him more on Prize Picks. I'll go over one of my plays on Prize Picks in a couple minutes, if you guys can hang around for that. But the Hornets, they truly run a hot hand approach to their team. Even guys like LaMelo Ball, we've seen it happen multiple times where if the bench unit or some other guys are playing really well, they won't bring in LaMelo Ball back into the lineup. It's happened 2 of the last 3 games. Like this game against Brooklyn, the backup unit was playing really well. And so once LaMelo Ball left the court in the 3rd quarter, he just never came back in, and it was competitive until the Hornets ended up blowing them out. And then in this game as well, he only played 24 minutes because the bench unit was playing well. So it's hard for me to really consider LaMelo Ball when his minutes aren't as secure as everybody else in this price range. I'm probably just staying away from the Charlotte Hornets team altogether. Move over to the Miami Heat. Victor Oladipo is out. So Bam Adebayo and Kyle Lowry ended up popping up on the injury report yesterday as probable, but right before I recorded this video, Bam Adebayo was downgraded to questionable. So with him being downgraded to questionable, I'm assuming he is going to miss this game because midday downgrades are never good. So I like Dwayne Dedmon, who is probably going to grab the start here, has always been a very good per minute producer, but it's always been about the minutes. They will need his size against Mason Plumlee. They can't really go small with Markieff Morris against him. So I like Dedmon quite a bit at 3,500. Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry get significant boost in the starting lineup without Bam Adebayo, and that's all that I'm really considering on this Miami Heat team. Move over to the Sacramento Kings versus the New Orleans Pelicans. The Kings are healthy right now. Marvin Bagley is still out of the rotation, but everybody seems relatively priced appropriately outside of Richaun Holmes, who is $5,800, averaging 1.31 fantasy points per minute. Barring foul trouble and blowouts, he should be playing around 32, 34 minutes a game. I think at $5,800, he is entirely too cheap. The New Orleans Pelicans, Zion Williamson, Garrett Temple are out. Josh Hart is questionable. But without Zion Williamson, they run one of the tightest rotations. So Ingram, Valanciunas, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Devontae Graham are all going to play big minutes. Devontae Graham is the guy that I like the most from this team. His new starting role on this team as opposed to the Hornets is much greater. He is now facilitating, the number 1 facilitator on this team. When he was with the Hornets, he was really just a spot-up shooter. So he's in a much better spot here, and this is a very good matchup. He is $6,000. I think that's still very affordable for him. Move on to the Dallas Mavericks versus the Denver Nuggets, waiting on a ton of injury news here. Unfortunately, this is 3 hours after the beginning of the slate. So Trey Burke is out. Kristaps Porzingis, Boban Marjanovic, and Sterling Brown are questionable. Luckily, yesterday we got the news very early on in the day that Kristaps and them were going to miss this game. If he is out again, I'm going to go back to the well with Luka. I know he kind of burned us with like the worst first half performance I've ever seen from him. But in the second half, he showed what he can be, and he usually does that for 2 halves, not just one. And so that actually will lower his ownership as well, just because of the recency bias. But he averages well over 1.5 fantasy points per minute without Kristaps Porzingis on the court since the beginning of last year. And I'm going to go back to the well with him. Tim Hardaway Jr., also a pretty decent play, but at $6,800, that's probably a bit too thin for me. Jalen Brunson at $4,800. Like I said, he was an absolute lock for us yesterday, and he would be a lock again if Kristaps Porzingis ended up missing. Maxi Kleber off the bench ended up being a very, very good play. He is only $3,300. He would definitely be viable as well in this situation. Move on to the Denver Nuggets, another team that we are waiting for news on. So Jamal Murray is out, as well as Vlatko Cancar. Nikola Jokic is questionable. So we know coming into this year that they already mentioned, Malone already mentioned that they want to have scheduled rest days for Nikola Jokic. Jokic ended up exiting midway through the second quarter of last game, and then it never returned. So with them already wanting to have routine rest days for Jokic and him actually being banged up here, I'm expecting him to miss this game. And this is where I want to get some edge over on Prize Picks, because if we assume that he is out, Will Barton and Michael Porter Jr. receive massive bumps today. And the projections that they have right now are as if Nikola Jokic were in. So even if Jokic was in, you're not drawing dead by taking the overs on Michael Porter Jr. and Will Barton. But I think there is a big chance that Jokic misses this game, and you are going to have crazy value on Michael Porter Jr. and Will Barton, because their projections are going to skyrocket on this team, or on this board. We got away with this the other day when we were predicting LeBron James to sit. We got the overs on Anthony Davis and Russell Westbrook like 5 or 6 points lower than what they were after LeBron James was ruled out. But since these guys are on the same team, we need to pair it with somebody else and have a 3-player power play. And that guy is going to be Mason Plumlee for me. At 29 fantasy points. He has played 32 and 37 minutes in each of these last 2 games with no PJ Washington. His minutes are much more secure here. So I like Mason Plumlee a good bit. So I'm going to take the over fantasy points on Mason Plumlee, Michael Porter Jr., Will Barton. Plumlee 29, Porter Jr. 32, and Will Barton 30. As soon as we get news on Nikola Jokic, these projections are going to pop. And like I said, even if Jokic plays, we're not drawing dead, because these projections are assuming Jokic is in the game. Go ahead and place that. I'll have my personal Patreon play over up after this video. But yeah, so Jokic ended up exiting midway through the second quarter. Jeff Green ended up closing out the half for him, but it was JaMychal Green who got the start for him in the second half, and they never went to Bowl, and this was with them playing against the Utah Jazz. So if they're willing to go small against Rudy Gobert, I'm assuming that they're just going to continue to play small ball with JaMychal Green and Jeff Green. And they are $3,200 and $3,100. If Jokic is out, they are very, very good plays. And then Aaron Gordon, Will Barton, and Michael Porter Jr. are all very, very good plays if Jokic ends up missing this game. Move over to the Los Angeles Clippers. Serge Ibaka, Marcus Morris, Keon Johnson, Jason Preston, and Kawhi Leonard are all out. But unfortunately, the Clippers were so far behind the Cavaliers last game that they opted to go small, even without Marcus Morris. Just because Batum got hot from 3, and I guess they can go small with him. I don't expect that in this matchup. I think Zubac ends up closing this game out if the game is competitive. But whenever they get really far behind, or they have Marcus Morris healthy, more times than not, they will opt to play small. But I don't think that necessarily happens in this matchup. I think Paul George is in the same spot as always. I mean, they just played awful last game against the Cavaliers. I'm expecting him to bounce back in a big way at very, very low ownership today. I actually like his over today on Prize Picks. It's at like 42, 43. That's way too low for him, especially with how you could tell how hard he's playing. By how he's playing defensively, going after steals and whatnot, because he nearly had 10 steals the other day. And over on PricePicks, you get 3 full points for that. So from this Clippers team, I'm really just considering Paul George, Reggie Jackson, and Zubats. I guess I don't mind Batum at $4,000. He's been starting in place of Marcus Morris. Should play around 30 minutes today. The Portland Trailblazers are going to be without Tony Snell and Norman Powell. The starters have lost massive minutes in these 3 of their first 4 games, because 3 of their first 4 games have blown out. We've only seen their opening day game, go the full extent without a blowout. So I think that some of these guys are discounted, like Yusuf Nurkic, like Damian Lillard. McCollum is probably priced appropriately. It looked like Damian Lillard was going to get it done last game before the game ended up blowing out. Looked a lot better. So at $9,300, you're probably getting a pretty big discount on Dame. If Norman Powell is out, Nasir Little is probably going to grab the start again. But it looks like Anthony Simmons is who has been benefiting the most. They've been more willing to play him next to Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum than they were last year. And so at $3,800, he's a sneaky tournament option and pivot off of Nasir Little, who is likely going to be a lot higher owned, assuming we get this Norman Powell news. Let me check if this is a... okay, never mind. The last game of the slate, the Cleveland Cavaliers versus the Los Angeles Lakers. Isaac Okoro is out in this game. They were already running a 9-man rotation, and now Isaac Okoro, who is playing 27 minutes per game, is going to be out again. Last game he was out, and Lamar Stevens ended up playing pretty considerable minutes off of the bench. He is the minimum price if you need a guy down there. But with him being out, I think it just secures the minutes of Garland, Sexton, and Ricky Rubio. They're all pretty decent plays, but I think everybody here is priced appropriately, especially in this matchup against the Lakers. More news that we are waiting for. So Trevor Ariza, Talon Horton-Tucker, Kendrick Nunn are all out. LeBron James, Rajon Rondo, and Wayne Ellington are questionable. I'm assuming LeBron sits here. And if that's the case, Westbrook, Anthony Davis, Malik Monk would all become near must plays for me. But this game starts 3.5 hours after lock, and I'm not sure when we're going to get the LeBron news. And also Anthony Davis is probable. I'm expecting him to play. If he were to miss for any reason, Dwight Howard and DeAndre Jordan would receive massive bumps. And then Wayne Ellington, he's been active in each of these last 2 games, just has yet to hit the court. Not expecting him to play here unless Rajon Rondo ends up missing this game. But before my voice completely gives out, I appreciate you guys being here. If you guys could subscribe, like, comment, that's all greatly appreciated. I will be here an hour before lock to break down all the news that we get between now and then, as well as answering as many questions as I possibly can. But I appreciate you guys being here. Best of luck, and until next time, peace.